he lost everything that mattered to him. But rather than shattering, he constructed something that could never be shaken. This is the tale of a father who made his greatest cause out of his greatest sorrow. Every office has that one individual who dissolves into the shadows. The unassuming figure who keeps everything in motion while the world rushes by. That individual was him. A janitor. A cleaner. A face that people saw every day but never saw. He came in before the first light kissed the sky, in quiet corridors still laden with yesterday's whispers. The floors shone by the time his colleagues came, the trash cans were emptied, and the environment felt clean, primed for another day of drive that never was his. He did not complain. He did not seek attention. Taught him for a long time that dignity is not seeing. It's about doing what must be done, even if nobody notices. There was quiet pride in every stroke of the mop, every shine on the floor. It was not glamour or glory that continued to sustain him, it was love. The kind that is invisible and sustains a purposeful father. People hurried past him with polite smiles or distracted nods, too busy to glance beyond the uniform. But behind that uniform was a man with a history, a heart, and a dream long buried beneath duty. What they perceived as routine was really resilience. What they tuned out as background noise was, in reality, the heartbeat of sacrifice. He had become unseen not because he was unworthy, but because the world had lost sight of finding beauty in common hearts. But his silence was not emptiness, it was perseverance. And one day, when fate placed a microphone in his hands, that very quiet man, no one noticed, would remind them all that greatness doesn't always share the limelight. Sometimes, silently cleans the floor it walks on. There was a time when his world was complete. A tiny apartment that rang with laughter, music, and the aroma of home cooking. Laughter was his favorite melody, and their little daughter's smile was his dawn. Life was not perfect, but it was sufficient. And then, in one bitter moment, all of it changed. A sudden sickness, a phone call, and the spark of his life was extinguished. The silence after that was too much to bear. The walls that had reverberated with love now seemed to shut in on him. List days merged into survival mode. He'd look at his daughter, so little, so pure, and question how he could fill the hollowness loss had etched on both their souls. No words existed for that kind of anguish. Only a quiet, gaping emptiness that needed courage he wasn't certain he possessed. Dreams of music, performing, making, all were gone with her. What was the point of a song when the one you sang it for would not be able to hear it anymore? The guitar that had once rested in his hands accumulated dust, its strings quiet like the sorrow he bore. But even in his shattered world, there was one thing that held true: his daughter needed him. And though he was broken, he could not let her see him break. So, he set the guitar aside and grasped the mop. He exchanged melodies for midnight shifts, applause for weariness. Because that's what love does. It perseveres. His life had been reduced to fragments. But even broken pieces can reflect light, and in time, that light would find its way back to him. Once upon a time, his hands were made for music. He used to play in small cafes. His guitar, carrying the stories his heart couldn't say out loud, was always present, cheering from the front row, her eyes radiating with belief. Belief that someday his songs would be heard by the world. But once she was gone, the music went with it too. Because he didn't love it anymore, but because life required something more substantial than dream survival. Bills didn't wait for wounds to heal. His daughter's requirements were more important than his sorrow. So he swapped his guitar for a broomstick, his stage for quiet corridors, and his love for wages. To pursue melodies now pursued overtime shifts. Every mop swing, every night shift, was a melody in the new symphony of his life. One written not of rhythm and verse, sacrifice and perseverance. There were nights when he'd pass by the old music store, stare at the guitars through the glass, and feel a sting deep in his chest. But then he'd remember his daughter's little voice saying, "Daddy, I'm proud of you." And that was enough to keep going. He complained not at all. He reminded himself, dreams can wait. His passion was a memory. A candle kept lit low, tucked in his heart, burning just enough to remember who he once was. He thought dreams were a luxury the fortunate could enjoy. But fate was not so kind. The music he interred was not lost. It was biding its time, waiting for the right place, the right purpose, and the right heart to listen once more. He never demanded praise, never wanted applause. His affection was quiet, not in extravagant gestures, but in little, unassuming acts that sewed every day together. Early every morning, before dawn had a chance to seep into the world outside, he'd strap on his tattered shoes and leave for work. The ground under his mop shone like glass, but its luster could never compare to pride of knowing he was bringing food to his little girl. He skipped breakfast more often than he could possibly count, lying to his daughter about not being hungry so that she could have just a little bit more on her plate. When she required new shoes, he mended his old ones. When her birthday rolled around, he didn't have the funds for pricey presents. So he spent the late hours creating her a handmade scrapbook stuffed with doodles, aged photographs, and letters that read, "Are my reason to keep going." His body hurt, his spirit grew weary, but he never showed it. Every bead of sweat on that shiny floor was a silent vow, no matter how difficult life got, bear the strain of his struggle. He lived his life like a candle, burning himself, gradually just to provide someone else with light. Others perceived a janitor, perceived a hero. The world will never even know his sacrifices, yet in each meal that she consumed, each warm blanket that she possessed, and each smile that she wore, he was there. And although his hands were hard and his back was bent from toil, his heart was unmoved. Because love, when it is genuine, doesn't require acknowledgement. It merely provides, quietly, abundantly. Leaning in the corner of his small flat was a dusty guitar. Formerly his voice, now a reminder of the man he had once been. Its strings had dulled, its surface worn, but whenever he walked by, he got a subdued pull deep within his chest. There once was a time when that instrument wasn't merely wood and wire. It was his soul, his escape, his dream. But dreams don't pay the bills. Life had buried his music beneath layers of responsibility. Between double shifts and bedtimes, there was no space left for harmonies. Thus the melodies that once flowed from his soul had become whispers of remembrance. Occasionally, as he mopped the vacant office hallway floor, under his breath, low enough that no one could discern it. It wasn't performance, it was survival. Music was the single aspect of him that would not die off entirely. Each note had with it a fragment of his history. His wife's laughter, the vows of his younger years, the heat of distant stages. And although he attempted to mute it, the music always managed to find its way back, an echo within his heart that could not be silenced. He didn't know it then, was still alive, patiently waiting under the dust and exhaustion. It was observing him love, sacrifice, and suffer. It was finding out what pain is, so one day, he finally played the guitar again. His songs would not be merely about music. They'd be about life. Dreams don't die. They sleep, awaiting courage to awaken them. Each night, after a weary day of cleaning floors and taking out the trash, he would quietly return to his tiny apartment. The lights would already be out, the world outside sound asleep, except for one little heart lingering by the window, shining bright, full of life. His daughter would dash into his arms, embracing him with the kind of hug that could repair even the exhaustion of the deepest soul. To her, he wasn't merely Dad. He was everything. The man who could mend broken toys, send monsters running, even when his own heart felt like lead. She didn't think of a janitor in a frayed uniform. She envisioned a hero covered in love and humility. She would ask him to sing a lot. "Daddy," she would whisper, placing the old guitar in the corner in his hands. He would smile, blushing, shaking his head. "That was a long time ago, sweetheart." But she would persist, hands on his arm. "Then make it now again." Those words cut deeper than any difficulty he'd ever known. Her belief in him wasn't naivete. It was innocence. Even when he'd lost sight of it himself. All the songs he'd suppressed under years of fatigue started to hum quietly once more. Because she reminded him of what he once was. He at last played. Softly at the start, then louder, until the apartment was warm through. She listened in wonder, wide-eyed, whispering, "That's my daddy." Within her faith, he recovered his own. Within her love, he regained the courage to hope. For sometimes, the smallest hearts possess the greatest strength. To make us remember that the world still requires our song. The office was abuzz that night. Laughter ringing in the corridors, music humming out of soggy speakers, and students laughing and chatting over snacks and soda. It was talent night, an informal affair intended for enjoyment, but to him it felt like balancing on the precipice of something greater, something lethal. He had joined up late in the day, hence prompted by his daughter's words still echoing in his mind, "Make it now again, Daddy." His hands dripped with sweat as he listened for his name to be called. Nearby, co-workers teased and supported one another, none of them aware that the mild-mannered janitor in the corner bore a lifetime's worth of tales in his heart. When they finally spoke his name, went quietly still, he moved to center stage, holding the microphone for dear life. For an instant, he couldn't catch his breath. The harsh lights blinded him, murmurs sounded like thunder. But then, he recalled her smile, his little girl's beaming grin. He shut his eyes and sang. The first note shook, then filled out. Warm, deep, aching. Decades of unspoken love and buried pain. The voices paused. Phones rested. Even the air conditioner's hum grew quiet. He wasn't singing. He was pouring truth into song. Died away, silence filled the air. Warm, holy, reverent. And then, in a moment that shattered the clouds like thunder, there was applause. Standing. Weeping. In that one moment, the man who was invisible became indelible. It wasn't fame he had achieved. It was liberty. Liberty to be viewed at last. So sometimes the softest hearts carry the strongest truths. They just require one night daring enough to let them speak. The following morning, the office seemed different. Less noisy, less harsh, more human. The same corridors he had mopped silently before were now abuzz with soft hellos and smiles. Individuals who used to walk by him, without even a glance, now paused to greet him with, "Good morning," their eyes still puffy from the previous night. Something had changed. Not merely in him, in all those who had heard him sing. That single song had transcended performance. It was a confession. Of love, loss, struggle, and hope. His voice had spoken what words never could, that every individual, regardless of how invisible they felt, carried a tale worth listening to. The melody stayed in individuals' minds, long after the music faded away. It reminded them of their own hidden dreams, their lost pleasures, their unspoken struggles. A witness had captured the performance using her phone and uploaded it online with the words, "Janitor just made the whole office cry." It had been watched by thousands by the end of the day. Millions by the end of the week. Comments flooded in from the ends of the earth. "Soul. He reminds me of my dad. This is what real beauty sounds like." But for him, fame and glory weren't the issue. Truth being told at last. And hearts being mended in the process. That one song had done everything. It made strangers believe, pain meaningful, and a humble janitor a beacon of hope. When music is born out of genuineness, it doesn't resonate. It changes. A song conceived in a lifetime of silence emerged as the voice of all the forgotten souls. It was a typical morning. The one that starts with the scent of coffee and the distant whine of a vacuum cleaner. He was mopping the hallway as usual, earbuds on, immersed in the gentle ring of his own song that went viral overnight. He couldn't believe it yet. Humans everywhere were tuning in, typing out texts, describing how his voice moved them. But he did not anticipate what happened next. His phone vibrated with an email signal. The name of the sender seemed to be familiar to him. A music producer. He initially assumed it to be spam, just another arbitrary message from the mess of the internet. But when he opened it, his heart froze. "Your voice has something real. Something the world needs to hear. If you're open to it." He read the words again and again, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or drop the mop right there. For years, he convinced himself his dream was gone. A chapter closed by loss and responsibility. But this message felt like life whispering, "It's not over yet." That night, email to his daughter. Her eyes gleamed like in the old days when he sang lullabies. "See, Daddy," she whispered. "Mom was right. You were supposed to sing." The following week, the producer. No glamour, no contracts. Only two individuals discussing purpose. Discussing communicating truth through music. At that moment, this wasn't about beginning again. It was about picking up where things had left off. Sometimes life waits for us to catch up. Not to pursue greatness, but to live our own truth once more. The beckoning wasn't merely opportunity. It was destiny, tapping softly on a healed heart. To sweep floors now strode onto stages, not beneath scorching spotlights or strobing cameras, but beneath the soft light of intent. He sang not for clapping hands, but for communion. Every performance was an expression of gratitude to life, a testament to survival, and a love letter to all those who had ever been unseen. His story spread far beyond music. Schools invited him to speak, asked him to share his journey. Wherever he went, people saw not a janitor turned singer, but proof that greatness often hides in plain sight. He became a living reminder that dreams delayed are not dreams denied. They're simply being prepared. But fame never defined him. After each show, he came home to his daughter, cooked her supper, helped her with lessons, and breathed softly to her. We made it. Not because of the limelight, but because they had transformed agony into purpose. Together. What began as the voice of one man became a movement. Folks started to share their own lost dreams. The painter who gave up painting, the mother who had wanted to write, the factory worker who used to dance. His bravery stirred something deep within them all. No longer was he merely a custodian of corridors. He was now a custodian of hope, and in a world that values importance by title and riches, he showed us a more basic truth: true success isn't about being seen. It's about being remembered for what you stir up in other people. With one song, one example of bravery, one moment of believing, he altered lives. He cleaned not only floors, but hearts, and made the world better than he found it. Ultimately, wasn't about fame. It wasn't a viral video, a stage, or applause. It was about an individual who wouldn't let life's burden mute his song. He showed us that even when the world turns a blind eye to you, your value doesn't diminish. It merely holds on for the right time to shine. He reminded us that beneath every hushed face, beneath every tired hand, is a tale of sacrifice, of love, and of hope that never quite fades. The custodian who used to mop floors didn't mop offices alone. He mopped hearts. He reminded us that greatness does not always come clothed in power or prestige. At times, it comes in work boots, with a mop and a dream that refuses to lose its breath. Resonate a message we must all be reminded of: you don't require the limelight to shine. You merely need the bravery to let your light shine, even in darkness. And so, to each unseen heart, silent dreamer, each warrior holding on quietly, remember his melody, because one day your time will arrive as well. And when it does, the world will finally listen to what's been held within you all along. Because empathy resonates. And when it does, it never ebbs.